Hi, my name is Amelia. Welcome to The Gray Lamb. I am The Gray Lamb. This is a channel that I created to just tell my story about being the child of two narcissistic parents. And I'm also developing ideas here as I'm learning more and more about narcissistic abuse to create a workbook. I started the book 2 years ago. It's almost done. And I just thought this would be a good way for me to keep developing these ideas. So thanks so much for being here with me today. This video is about my experience as a child dying to be normal. So that means to me, I was a child who did not have what I felt I needed. Therefore, I looked for it out in the world and I saw what I wanted and I craved that for my life. And this is everything from clothing to food to parental behavior to normal passages of life, like, family events, things like that. So because I grew up with two unconventional parents who were poor and had problems, I did not have these normal things that I so craved and desired. So I felt very deprived most of my life. Now, when you're a kid and you want something, not a lot can get in between you and the thing that you want. When I was little, I wanted candy. Later on, I wanted makeup and I wanted clothing. So the first thing that I did in order to take care of me was to start shoplifting. This was not something that I, was a good habit, but it was what my life drove me to. When I was little, we were poor, we were on welfare, and I was shamed for asking for things. So if the kids at school had a certain jacket and it wasn't too expensive and I wanted it, that was not just a need, it was a social need for me to fit in, and I didn't need to be shamed about it. I believe that my parents, sometimes tried to give me what they wanted, but they had no idea how much I was suffering at school because I did not fit in. So I was shamed for wanting to have things in order to fit in. Now, all of the other kids at school seemed to have a little bit more of a normal life than me. They had usually had two parents, usually. If they didn't, they lived in a house. I lived with my mother on welfare in apartments. My friends had cars, they had furniture, they had TVs. We did not have these things. We had broken hand-me-down furniture. We had a small black and white TV. We didn't have money to go out and, go on big shopping trips. And we did not have a car until I was in high school. And I never had access to that car, not even once. Was to get adopted into other families. So I had friends that, would have multiple siblings, and I would just, sleep over there. And that would give me a way to get away from the stress that my parents were always under, because I was always either with my mother in her apartment or with my dad and maybe in his truck or with him in his life. It wasn't a good space for me to be. It wasn't comfortable. They did what they could, but for the most part, my parents were poor and stressed out. So when I was at other people's houses, I got to have, mainstream food. I got to have meat or hot dogs or sugary cereal. I got to do things with a group instead of just a parent. I got to enjoy the sort of sensory, I'm autistic, the sensory experiences of being in another environment where there was maybe a father and a mother who had jobs, and a way more average, normal environment than I had in my family environment. So this theme of me, adopting myself into other families is still ongoing. I have a chosen family now of friends, and I have two families that I've been kind of adopted into. And it sounds silly, but it's just about, other people understanding that I do need support and that I am a vulnerable person and I have a lot to offer. So I have recreated that now in my adult life. And I also have a partner, and I have a pet, and I have friends. So I've created that what I needed now in my adult life. The third thing that I did, mostly my teenage years, in order to give myself what I was lacking at home, unfortunately brought me and others a lot of stress. So that was becoming a serial monogamist. So when I was in my teenage years, there was nothing you could do. I had to have a boyfriend. I could not live without a boyfriend. And that went on for decades. So unfortunately, I started to live with my partner at age 14. I started to live with another partner at age 16. And there was, it was a crazy time. There was people getting arrested. There were drugs. There was people getting abused. It was a very messed up time, my teenage years. So later in my life, I started to just notice the pattern that, yeah, I have to have a boyfriend at all times. I also felt judged and shamed by this when literally nobody understood that I didn't have any support and I didn't have a family. My health was failing. By the time I was 20, I was disabled. I could not work a normal job. I went to university in my 20s and I have not been able to work due to the stress incurred from my very difficult childhood. So that's just a little bit of background on me and some of the things that I did to try to make up for what I did not have at home. I also experienced a lot of bullying and shame about the fact that I was poor growing up and I didn't have what other families had. I felt like I was kind of pushed into behaviors that were not healthy for me. Fight, flight, fawn, freeze, behaviors that started in childhood. But I'm still unpacking and unlearning now. And I'm happy to say that I do have good relationships in my life with people who actually understand me and care about me. And I'm very grateful for that.